Welcome, everyone, to the 14th episode of the Casandra Properties podcast. We are joined today by Sean Conaghan. He's the president and CEO of Valpak, a local business owner who we have had the pleasure of working with over the last few years. We're really excited about this guest today. We've had some great experiences together, and he's got quite an interesting history. So with that, Sean, let's jump right into it.
Thanks. I appreciate the introduction.
Sure.
I finally made it. I've arrived. Right?
You have arrived, baby.
I hit 52 and I've arrived.
You made it to the Casandra Properties podcast.
This is some setup, by the way.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you. It's we're very proud of it. It's something that we wanted to give exactly what we're doing today. We wanted to give fellow small businesses an opportunity to come in and just talk through, what's happening out there, the challenges, any issues that they wanted to cover, and just give everyone a platform to communicate what the message was, of the day, if you will.
Yeah, I became a fan very early on.
Thank you.
I've been tracking your podcast, and it's going to be a hard act to live up to in terms of some of your previous guests, but I'll do my best. In fact, my mother always told me I have, this great face for radio. So,
so you picked up as soon as you came in. I'm cleanly shaven today.
Yeah,
where I did the post-COVID cleanup, right?
Yeah. Ironically, I made the same decision yesterday. Must be kindred spirits.
Great minds, baby.
Yeah, I just said, for the audience, I gotta do this.
So let's. I want to jump back, as we often do, right? We want to go back to the beginning and the origins of your childhood. Where were you born and raised? Where did you grow up? You've got an amazing history, and it's something I really wanted to share with the audience. So take us back. You're born and raised in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, yeah, Brooklyn, New York, Bay Ridge, Brooklyn.
Bay Ridge, baby.
Yeah, it's now Staten Island. But I was born in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, 74th Street, 5th Avenue. Our Lady of Angels student.
There you go.
One of five. Yeah, one of five. In fact, this is the size of the room I grew up in with everyone.
Wow.
Right? Yeah, there was 7 of us. But a fantastic upbringing. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Some great friends, competitive spirit on the block. It was just an amazing upbringing. So, yeah. It's
funny. I was talking about this earlier with one of my colleagues, and they were asking how my kids are doing in school now because they're back in school. And I didn't give credit when this first happened, and it was, okay, school's going to be shut down for a period of time. I remember as, being a kid, for me, like, school's out. It was like, yeah, all right, we're not going to have to go to school. But it was different when we were kids, right? It was playing outdoors all the time, right? From the time we came home from school, it was stoop ball, stick ball, whatever it was, manhunt, riding bikes, having a good time. But that's not the case today. The play dates and, everything is so structured and scheduled. It's not like it used to be. So for the kids, it's so important for them to be back in school and for them to have that socialization. And that's really the main contact point, if you will, for the kids. But when we were kids, that wasn't the case.
Far from it. Obviously, technology being a big part of today. But, thinking back growing up, the tie would be off.
Yeah.
The shirt would be half off before you get into the, in my case, the apartment. But yeah, that was the thing you look forward to, was getting changed and back on the street. And it didn't matter the game that was being played. It was something that you sort of looked forward to before the school bell went,
Without a doubt. So you've got a very interesting accent for a guy that's born and raised in Bay Ridge.
What are you talking about?
So how does this come about? So take us from, you went to Catholic school, and something somewhere clearly has happened for you to have this profound accent. So
on my mother's side, they were from Ireland. My mom was first generation, and my dad had moved over from Scotland in the early 50s, and that's the whole connection between the accent. Ultimately, what happened was, just over time, you know, you play the sport your father plays. So
Sure.
I played soccer at a very young age.
How young of an age are we talking? Knee high to a grasshopper, like as soon as you could stand.
We're talking, after furniture surfing, right? I've got a ball, right? And I pretty much slept with it every day, and that was my thing. I love the game, and I did that very competitively at a very early age.
Was this something Dad did in a competitive way, or just was it a hobby for Dad?
Not a tremendously competitive way, but you know, in Scotland, it's all sports here in America rolled into soccer, right? So everyone plays the game,
right?
You know, and that was their upbringing. You know, play it in the street, play it everywhere, at school. But you know, if you kind of take all of the sports here, baseball, football, basketball, you know, all of those sports, you know, the concentration of the country. And we, you know, at that time, Scotland, although a very small country, 4 or 5 million people, did very well on the international stage just because of that concentration of playing. So my dad got me into the game very, very early, and I had an opportunity to go and play over in Scotland. And
At what age was that?
So I went over for the first time at 10 years old, just to see family, spend time with them. And, you know, I realized that this was my dream. You know, everyone played the game. Now, you got to remember, you know, at 1978, there weren't many people playing the game in this country.
Yep.
Not anywhere near the
sure.
You know,
we were late adopters.
Late adopters, but caught up quickly.
Yeah.
So, I arrived and immediately fell in love with it and traveled back and forth for a couple of years, and then an opportunity unfolded to go and live with my uncle and aunt and go to school and play with a professional club on an academy basis, and then ultimately pursued a career in soccer. So
I've known you now for at least 4 or 5 years. I had no idea about this. So So I have to ask a couple of questions here because this is really interesting for me.
Sure.
You're one of 5. Are your siblings? Do they play also?
Yeah, they do. You know, later adopters, as you had mentioned, my older brother Tony, who really never picked up the game, but a tremendous athlete, picked up the game when he was about 14 years old and got into it in a very big way, and ultimately went on and got a full scholarship and was a 4-year All-American.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so whole family's into it, and the way you phrase that puts perfect context, right? So here in America, we've got our basketball and our hockey, and we've got our soccer now, and we've got our football, and boxing, and on and on and on. Imagine all of that noise gone, one sport. That's the focus, the passion, right? Yeah. It's an unbelievable passion that we see overseas. So you're in Scotland for the first time when you're 10. At what age did you go and actually enroll and start playing?
So I was 13 and a half. I had
13 and a half.
Finished my freshman year. I went to Bishop Ford for that one infamous year. Happened to win the Brooklyn Queens Championship.
Really?
Yeah, it was interesting as an incoming freshman, and that was a tremendous success for the school. We had never really amassed any sort of awards up until that point in time, so that was exciting. And a lot of the club players, you know, I played for a club in Brooklyn called Sporting Club Yoa on 62nd Street between 8th and 9th. Great club, by the way. This was a club of champions. Everyone who came over from Europe ended up playing at your club in Brooklyn, which is still there, by the way.
So you're 13 and a half years old, living what must have been a dream, right? For me, I grew up, I loved football, but again, we had all the distractions. I played basic ball. I played into high school and, you know, got hurt in high school. And back then when you tore a knee, I was undersized anyway. So I had the passion, but I was way undersized. So I can't even begin to imagine at 13 and a half living a dream, right? You're now overseas, and do you play just in one place? Do you travel? How does that all come together?
It's everything. right? It's all in. So
All in.
you play at school,
Mm-hmm.
right? You play for your school team, and then you go into the professional academy at night. So you play, for the most part, 4 nights a week, and then you play a game on a Saturday or Sunday, depending on. But you're
Wow.
traveling. You're traveling from city to city, which could take anywhere from 3 to 5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's nothing like here in America. You are all in. I mean, 4 nights a week, weekends, playing at school. This is what you want to be when you grow up, right? You want to be a professional soccer player.
Yeah, and that's all I wanted to. I was really lucky, right? Early on, I knew what I wanted to do, and I think that is actually there was 2 things that I fell in love with really young. Number one is soccer, right, and the other 2 was sales.
Sales.
Yeah, I loved speaking to people. I loved developing relationships. It's actually probably what was fostered by my mom and dad.
Yep.
Right. They were open people. I wouldn't say gregarious, but definitely loved life and knew how to have a good time. Knew how to poke fun at each other.
Sure.
Right. And that's part of growing up in a big family in a small household.
Yeah, something we don't do nearly enough anymore is poke fun at each other in a lighthearted way and just, let our hair down a little bit, right? So here you are pursuing your passion. And on the sales thing, that's something you either have or you don't. You either are a born salesperson or you're not.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that a lot of it has to do with your personality, right?
Sure.
I at this stage of my career, I probably look back and say, I've never sold anything in my life. What I have done over time is made a compelling reason for someone to invest in, whether it's a media campaign, and they ultimately make their own decision what's good or bad for their business.
Yeah.
But early on, when it was raw and I was selling chocolate bars, right?
Yeah.
You want to buy a chocolate bar?
So 504 Chocolate Factory.
Yeah.
Right? So what is this about?
This is about my mom.
Okay.
I called the Chocolate Factory because, she had this really, really unbelievable way to bring out the best in all of us. And you would think the easiest thing to do when you have 4 kids, one right after the other, right? We were Scottish quads, if you will, right? It's like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Right, and then big gap and my youngest brother, Brian. But, the easiest thing would be well, Tony's doing that. Aren't you doing it?
Right.
And never, always resisted the temptation to do that.
That's amazing.
But brought the best out of each of us in our own particular way. Always struggled at school. I'm going to be honest with
Me
you.
too.
From the onset, I thought it was a waste of time, and that's not my opinion now.
Yep.
But at the time, it was interfering with my soccer.
Right.
But I did find a love for selling, and there was these chocolate drives that you would have at school, right?
Sure.
You'd sell chocolate bars in the beginning of the year.
Yep.
And then at the end of the year, you would sell raffles. So my mother said, well, why don't you compete this year? This is from, first grade. And I'm like, yeah, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So order a box, and I go out and I have pretty good success. And I order another box and another box, and I could feel, I know the audience can't see this right now, but this,
Yeah,
right?
the passion.
That 2 hands clenched, and you go, oh my goodness, I love this, right? And it's the competitive drive that kicks in. And by the end of the cycle, I had figured out what banks were open late, where to stand at the subway, right? What banks might let me in
Yep.
to the bank, and I also took I also took a competitive element from how other people were selling. Some people's parents worked in financial institutions,
Yep.
and the parents would go out and sell them. And I was, I don't want any part of that. I want to do this off my own back. And I think the biggest thing was winning the bike, right? I always wanted a bike. I didn't have a bike at that point, at that time in my life. And in fact, we didn't have a place for a bike.
Right.
Right, because we were in this apartment, and the only place you could put it is in the basement. So we ultimately, and I ended up winning the first time round, and big pizza party for the whole class.
Yep.
And it was, the adulation coming, just being a champion at something at such a young age made me feel great. Won the bike, ultimately sold the bike. And, as raffles came around, I started selling raffles.
Yep.
And so by the time I left, I had won 16 bikes and sold them all.
See, that's amazing, right? So I said earlier, you can't teach that. And it's hard to explain. You either have that drive in you or you don't, right? There's a certain level of fierce competition, right? You want to be the best at what you're doing. There's a confirmation that we take from this, right? The success that we have as we go through these things. And you won 16 bikes.
Won 16 bikes. And this is the competitive side of it, right? Our mom would always, when there was maybe a little dip in form, so I see you're not going out today. It's just that little nudge. Remember, if you relax, somebody else might overtake you. And it was just that little gentle reminder to say, hey, you got to get busy. If you're going to be successful in this life, whatever it is, whatever you preface success as being, you got to get busy. You got to get on it. So fast forward 10 years, right? 10 years, Brian's born, who's now my partner in Valpak. Of course, it's his turn to sell the chocolate bars, and he isn't going to be left behind, right? So Brian, his big thing was, can he outsell his bigger brother? And he ended up doing it. So,
really?
Yeah. A great story, and he still pokes fun at me today about it,
That's absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, so that's the chocolate factory.
So you're 13 and a half, you start your career, not much time for anything else, right? You're hustling, and school kind of becomes secondary. It's interesting. You really can't, you don't understand it when you're a kid going through school and you're just not clicking, right? It's just not hitting for you. And I remember as a kid being so frustrated that, because I was competitive, and that was, for me, anything that I did, I wanted to excel at. And just for some reason, the switch never flipped on for school. And it's not until you're much older in life and you can kind of reflect and look back and understand there were just different motivations for you at that point. And, I can see that we're very, very similar. At that point, we're thinking we're smarter than this. We don't need this. But the discipline and the forced discipline, if I had more guidance in that area, I think I could have excelled more at school. But I've always had this kind of spirit, and, where I felt a passion, look out. And if I didn't, it was tough. So grades for me were not always the forte,
Concentration can only be divided in so many ways.
Yep.
And, when I look at problems, equations, whatever it might be in school, I was problem solving on the soccer field, right? I was thinking about last week's game, what I could have done. By the way, I've learned way more from my losses than I have from my successes.
Yep.
In the game, and I think it's been the greatest teacher in business.
Yep.
When you think about 22 permutations on a soccer field, right? Those ever-changing angles. I just couldn't school. Again, I am going to finish, right? I am going to get back to it. It's like wanting to run a marathon, right? I've always wanted to run New York. I didn't want to run any marathon. I wanted to run the New York Marathon. I finished that 3 years ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wow.
And so that was a lifelong goal, and so I'm going back and checking the boxes. Was it Henry Button, right? Isn't that the film with
Benjamin, the Curious
Button.
Case of Benjamin
That's
Button.
it. I'm going backwards.
Yeah.
I'm doing it backwards.
I love it. So you're in this career in soccer. How far did that take you? I mean, what heights did you reach in soccer?
So rewind a little bit. I think it was around 9 years old where I entered into a McDonald's skills competition. It was a tri-state sort of event, and you went to various locations throughout the New York tri-state area. I want to say there was about 8 or 9 rounds in the finals. So this is what drove me. The finals were going to be at Giant Stadium before a Cosmos game. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who know, New York Cosmos were a hot property at the time. They would sell anywhere from 45 to 65,000 tickets on a regular basis. So I go through the 8 rounds. Great. Of course, it's 108 degrees on the day of. But, you know, I hear that Pele is going to be at the stadium.
Oh, wow.
And of course, you know, if there's anybody you want to perform in front of, it's the man himself. So we go through the rounds, and I'm tabulating in my mind, you know, as we go through each level of competition, what's happening here. And I'm saying I'm in with a shout. I think I'm in with a shout. So it unfolds. I actually end up winning.
Wow.
You know, the New York Tri-State McDonald's skills competition. And not only was Pele there, he was there to present the trophies.
Oh, you're kidding me.
So, no. It's kind of how I felt. And yeah, I had the pleasure of meeting with him, speaking with him for a good bit. And once he had presented me to that trophy, there was no going back. It was only one person I wanted to be like, and it was him.
That's remarkable.
Yeah.
To meet your idol, and not even to meet, to have your idol recognize excellence in the same field and be presented with a trophy, that has to be one of the defining moments in your life.
Yeah, it absolutely jumps off the page for sure. Have some great photographs of it, and I remember the day vividly. You know, my dad with an 8mm camera,
sure,
you know, watching me juggle, and having my siblings there. You know, it was an amazing day, and certainly part of a nice chapter of my life.
That's remarkable. So, when do you come back stateside?
So, I want to say I started frequently coming back around when I was 21. First of all, I never really left for an extended period of time. I always went home for Christmas. Mm-hmm. Always went home for a portion of the summer. And yeah, so I'm always connected, or
yep,
there's a family member or two coming over and visiting. So I've never really lost my roots for New York.
So you're back full time, we'll call it 21 years old, and
yeah,
at that point, do you jump right into a sales position, or what happens then?
So let me characterize this as the time in my life where you figure out what you don't want to do.
Oh, yeah.
So my dad was a stonemason, right? A union stonemason, tile setter, and the trades. He was an excellent craftsman, and he had got me into the local union, which was fantastic. Full mechanics wages as an apprentice. It was
sure
an exceptional opportunity. But after about 3 months of doing that, I realized very quickly that this was more of a sentence than than a career path, and that I wanted to pursue, because it just didn't. It didn't correlate back to one of my first loves, which was sales, and I was very grateful, thankful for the opportunity, but this just wasn't.
Didn't click.
It didn't click, and you know, credit to him. It put us through school, and yeah, it got us.
Did it bother Dad that it didn't click for you?
I think initially because it was so hard to get the opportunity, but you know, just I guess was left sort of saying, hey, maybe try and find something before you.
Right.
I was, that was it. I needed to check out, and I needed to go and explore. And I had been living on my own, James. I had a mortgage when I was 17, turning 18. I had already been living a soccer life, and was keeping in touch with sales, doing that on a part-time basis. So it was okay. I grew up very quickly.
So you exit the Mason field. It doesn't click. It's not for you.
Yeah.
You want to pursue something in sales. What's the next chapter?
My love, right? Which is, I get into media sales, and immediately I know that this is the career for
Your
me.
home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a company in Long Island, and I was very fortunate. My brother-in-law, who had worked for the company in another capacity, got me the interview, and I knew from that moment. Yeah, I went to 3 interviews.
Yep.
And it was unusual because I didn't have a college degree. They typically were looking for college grads. I, for the most part, had really, except for selling chocolate bars and raffles,
Right.
had no sales experience of notoriety. Sold photocopiers while I was in Scotland, but but I went in, right? I went all in.
Did they take into account the passion for sports and the success in the sports field?
Great question. In fact, the last interview, the interviewer asked me if I was to get a phone call to come back and play, would I do it? And it was a very tricky question. And of course, the answer was yes, unequivocally. So he appreciated that honesty. And I think one of the questions he did ask was, what intrigues you about sales? And again, I get back to just that drive, that adrenaline rush that comes from someone saying yes, and ultimately going along with your way of thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from that point to your launch or your acquisition of the Staten Island chapter, if you will, of Valpak, fill in the gap for me there. What happens in between? How long of a period of time is this?
So it's within 24 to 30 months.
Okay.
It all happens very quickly. I'm working for this company, Advo, and they were a fantastic company. Their training was tremendous. I probably wouldn't have quick started my Valpak career if I didn't have that foundation in media. So I'm forever grateful for everything. And of course, I paid that back in spades by applying myself, for the most part, 24/7, just to learning the business and driving the revenues that supported their faith in me.
Yep.
So 2 things happen very quickly. One is I get a phone call to show up to Manhattan to come in for an audition.
Audition. Okay.
Yeah. And I was playing semi-pro for a club in Brooklyn, and come in for an audition for an AT&T commercial. They're filming a long-distance telephone commercial, and they're looking for actual soccer players. So I go for an audition. I got a call back, and another call back, and next thing you know, after like 6 or 7 callbacks, I actually landed a spot for an AT&T commercial, which was it was crazy.
You were in an AT&T commercial?
Yeah, never off TV. I was doing a bicycle kick, speaking part, and that sort of was. That was some of the supporting cash behind helping me buy my Valpak franchise. So it's the 2 worlds collide, and so I'm off and running. I'm 23, 24 years old, and
amazing.
I'm in Valpak and walking the streets of Staten Island.
Now we have to sidebar a little bit here,
Sure.
because I learned a few minutes earlier that's not the only time that you had an acting gig, if you will. There was a brief appearance in Saturday Night Fever, right?
That is true. That is true. Oh, boy. So for those of you who recall, Vinnie Barbarino. Yeah, that's it, Peter.
Everybody recalls Vinnie Barbarino.
Vinnie Barbarino.
Oh, my God, is that you?
Here I am, Mr. that is me.
Wow.
That is me. Yeah. In fact, the four people in that are obviously my sister is leaning up against the wall, and I'm standing there with my brother Tony and Moira Smith. We'll get back to Moira and who she is and what she means to our family. Maybe at the end if we have time for it. So
Sure.
So where were we? Okay, so Vinnie Barbarino is apparently coming to Bay Ridge to film, this movie. I don't think it had a name at that point in time, but yeah, we think it's a total fallacy. However, 3-4 o'clock in the morning, next thing you know, the caravans show up, the streets are cleaned, and next thing you know, we're running downstairs, and a director asks, "Would you like to be in a movie?"
Just like that.
Just like that.
Unbelievable.
Just like that. And of course, we jumped at the chance, and my brother Thomas went up for cornflakes, and he didn't make the cut. And basically, we got to meet Vinnie Barbarino, and we got the day off of school. That was our reward for the cameo appearance in Saturday Night Fever.
So you get to meet John Travolta. Yeah. You're doing AT&T commercials completely out of the blue, but that speaks to the entrepreneurial spirit, right? You kind of feel like you can do anything, and that's remarkable. For me, it was a very different experience. For me, and I've shared this in some of my older videos, I've always been, and I was embarrassed to share this, but I'm not anymore. I've become comfortable with it. I was always driven by fear, which served me well because I had one focus. From the time I came out of school, I was in real estate. That was it. As you can imagine, growing up with Mom, that's all I knew. It's all I was around. So for me, and for a very long period of time, up until the recent past, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, before I started to get involved in some other ventures and other businesses, it was real estate. I knew it. It was my clique. It was my home. And I was good at it. I had a passion for it. I believed in it. Once I believed in the product,
sure,
that was it. You're not selling, and I didn't learn this until recently with business coaching. It's not so much that you're selling a product, you're selling yourself, right? You're out there and you're connecting with people, and they're feeding off your energy, they're feeding off your passion. I had no formal training in that. It just, you knew it, and it was what I did. So for me, it was a fear of being outworked. It was a fear of being outsold. It was a fear of being out hustled. So I would double down, triple down, quadruple down on my efforts, and I would just go. But that same fear did not serve me well in that it limited me in doing other things. See, I never would have pursued going up and taking an audition for a commercial. I never would have done those things until now. Again, the last few years, I've gotten much more comfortable with this. But there, in the entrepreneurial spirit, I found that it cuts two ways. You either will go and try it all and you have no fear of failure and you go keep running, or you get super focused and no matter what comes your way, you're just not going to get knocked down. So I've learned, and I've learned more in the last few years from venturing out and getting out of my comfort zone and getting knocked down, right? Picking myself back up and not only recognizing that it was okay, almost in a weird way enjoying the experience, right? Of kind of getting knocked down and saying, there's all these different opportunities and avenues to learn that I didn't pursue earlier in my career. So I applaud you. I really do applaud you, because I never would have had the opportunity, not the opportunity, I never would have had the confidence, quite honestly, to step that far out of my comfort zone. So that's really remarkable.
Sometimes you don't know what you're in until you're in it.
Yeah.
Or you get, and I think jumping off, right? Jumping off, we have a little bit of an age gap between us, but, with having older siblings and playing soccer in front of decent numbers, you kind of get away from that fear factor, performing and just taking chances. It's I think in today's society there's so much between winning, losing, and I think soccer teaches you very quickly, right, how to win, how to lose, how to pick yourself up when it's maybe Tuesday after the game and you got to build up to the weekend again. It's I think there's just so definitive, right? I think you'll agree with me on this one is that winning or losing it's not definite, right? you have to keep going forward. You have to continue to innovate and find new ways and never get comfortable.
Yeah, so that's how we met, actually, right? So we met because back when the retail apocalypse, if you will, had just begun to show the result of where this was going to head, we had a common client, Dave Berman, who owned some retail holdings. And to his credit, he was open to our idea of this is a new day, and you no longer can leave the tenants to as almost independent entities. It's traditionally been landlord on one side of the table, tenant on the other side of the table. You do what you do, and we do what we do. We saw that there was, through this change, and of course technology drove so much of the change, that you had to partner with your tenants, right? You had to really work with them in lockstep to not only promote the center as a separate entity, but you had to work with the tenants in conjunction with a common goal of a live, vibrant center where you're able to drive traffic, drive footsteps, and in turn, drive sales, right? So you were the only company that we had come across that when we spoke to them about this, they weren't like, well, wait a minute, contacting tenants and getting permission to incorporate into flyers. You were like, absolutely. You whiteboarded it for us, right? You had us come in. We grabbed lunch. I think it was me, Dave, you, your brother, and Rebecca, right? We posted up in your shop, and we spent a couple of hours just whiteboarding who were the tenants, what were events. You guys came up with a list of great events. And we basically said, okay, here's how we're going to do this. We'll contact these people. You guys actually stepped in. So for the property owners out there, I would encourage you to contact Sean and his team. They're super innovative. And what they did is they actually contacted the tenants, and it wasn't just the mom and pops. You guys had relationships on a different level with the corporates.
Yeah.
So you were able to reach out, and this may sound like it's a simple thing to do. It's not, right? We've had enough calls on this to understand that you guys were like, it was wonderful. You were all in. You were like, yeah, we've got relationships with these corporates. The ones we don't, we'll cultivate relationships with.
So it was a credit to everyone involved, right?
Yeah.
And you look at Dave and Murray and yourself, it was about, right, leadership. That's why they call it leadership, right? Because you're the first ones to go, right? Or you lead the pack, if you will. And I think when creative minds get together with a common goal, you figure things out very quickly. And everyone had something to offer in the outcome, and it worked very well.
It did. Yeah. We ended up generating, through these events, we had lines with hundreds of people in them coming to do an Easter egg hunt was one of them. And, of course, the traditional pictures with Santa. And you generated an online campaign. We did a lot of community donations where we gave away, like for Black Friday, I think it was $2,500 or $5,000 we gave away to a shopper. But then we also matched money and gave it to charity. So it was a nice run. And you guys generated a lot of activity in a very difficult time.
And now it's going to be even more difficult, right?
Yeah.
So we're already looking at how do we change trends, right? How do we rebound? how does everyone rebound?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's, we've been thinking about this since early March.
Yep.
Right. Of okay, are our people okay? Is everyone around us okay? Right. How do we now help our customers? How do we be of service to them first and foremost? Right. Because I've been in business a long time, and if you're just in the transactional business, it gets caught up real quickly.
Sure.
And you're out, right? So you have to have a long play, right? And then you also have to have a short play here. And I think that the things that we're implementing to keep our customers happy and keep consumers connected to those customers, that's the catalyst of what we do.
So I think it's important, if you're from Staten Island or you're from Brooklyn, a good chance you know Valpak. But I'm proud to say, through the brilliance of Petey over there in the corner, he now has us in over 50 countries. We have an audience for the podcast. We have 8,300 subscribers on YouTube. So I think it's really important for us to press pause for a moment, explain to the audience who Valpak is, what do you do, give us a nice, well-rounded roll-up of the company.
Sure. Petey, can we get the subtitles going? Yeah. So the history of the company is it's not unique because most great companies start in a garage, right?
Right.
And Valpak is no different. The founder, Terry Label, ironically, his name is Label, gets a package in the mail. He's reading it through and on the beach in Tampa, and all of a sudden, Eureka, the light goes on and says, I wonder if I can put some people together, some local businesses, and he starts going around. No charge, just let's go out and see if this works.
Yep.
And sample. Next thing you know, they have a printing press in the garage, and then it expands, and it grew very rapidly. For 52 years now, it's
52 years.
52 years going strong. 1968, and we mail 40 million households monthly.
Wow.
Across America, and what I love about what we do is on a local level is we help local business.
Yep.
That is, if there's one thing that keeps me excited is that knowing that ringing someone's cash register ultimately impacts the family and the employees of everyone that works within that company or organization, that gets me excited. Commerce, right? We've sort of created our own currency, if you will, James, and that's, I have to tell you, being in Staten Island for as long as I have, that was one of the things. It probably wouldn't have worked if I had started somewhere else. Staten Island gave me the confidence to then branch out into Brooklyn. I know it usually happens the other way, but yeah. And it was inviting, and it's an interesting business community because if you have something of notoriety and you're visible, you'll get a chance.
Yes.
You get a chance.
Yep.
And we took that. And
So you guys, when traditionally or historically, when you say Valpak, you think of the direct mail campaigns, right? That's kind of the envelope comes and it's got the coupons in it, and that's traditionally, and quite honestly, when we sat down, that's how I had known Valpak. But I guess technology, as it's disrupted so many business and really every facet of our lives, it disrupted what you guys did over there too. So it's not direct mail anymore per se. It's direct mail, and you've got a whole litany of services over there now.
Yeah, so it's about customer acquisition, right? Consumers change their habits and their behaviors, right? Obviously, the laptop became portable through smart devices, and that was the time when we had to say, okay, this is now going to be impactful to our customers. We were really listening to what they had to say and how to serve them better, which has ultimately became our social media services, our web development services, or all things what I consider customer acquisition.
So you guys now are a full service company. You guys are doing branding, you're doing SEO, you're doing social media services, you're doing the mobile adaptations, right? Because these phones have become such an extension of everything we do. It's not good enough to build a magnificent site. It has to be able to integrate and be fully functional on all of the different type of devices that we have today.
Yeah, our job really is as a full service local agency is to do the things that small business knows they need to do. They just don't have the time and the expertise and maybe the creative aspect of it for it to come live. So we help take them to market.
So
Take that hat off, right? Because we all, as small business people, we all wear multiple hats, and if we can take away that marketing hat for them, that's our sweet spot.
So that's a big problem for small business, right? So my business coach Chad Reyes had communicated with Rob Nixon to me recently. Do what you do best and pay for the rest, right?
Yeah.
As entrepreneurs, we have a habit, and it's a bad habit, of having our sweet spot, having our gift, having what we absolutely do better than anybody else, but because we're entrepreneurs, we can kind of touch and move different facets of the business forward. And when you're starting a business, the inclination is, things are tight, the budget's tight, let me try and move this forward, let me handle the branding. I've read a couple of articles about SEO. I understand a little bit about optimizing my mobile site. I understand. And good Lord, is that not the case, right? So it's so critically important for the small businesses out there. If you haven't had the opportunity to sit with a professional company like Sean's, it is night and day, right? When you sit with a professional and you now have a counterpart where my passion and my gift is deal making. I am a deal maker through and through, born and bred. I'll go up toe to toe with anybody, and I believe that in my heart when it comes to deal making and visioning. You were the counterpart for marketing, advertising, branding, all of those other things that are outside of, right? There's the negotiation of the deal. There's the vision of finding the property and seeing what it will be down the road, getting it entitled, selling the product. But then there's the marketing of this stuff.
Yeah.
So to sit with a counterpart that shared this vision in their field, that shared this passion in their field, started to open my eyes to, hey, wait a minute.
So it's all great points, and the one thing is that you're in the real estate business,
Yeah.
where you have a physical property that demonstrates the value. I think one of the hard aspects of what we do in media is where did the attribution come from? How do I quantify the expense? And I want to say it was about 7-8 years ago, my brother and I had developed a technology called PackTrack. PackTrack, yeah. We'd actually trademarked the name, and ultimately the idea behind PackTrack concept and proven concept is to take elements of every campaign, whether it be social media or cooperative direct mail, and tie in all of the technologies, phone, internet, search, and bring that all together into one dashboard, so the customer could see if they spent $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, whatever the number is, what was the attributable return on investment. So that was.
Is this live now?
It is live, yeah. It is live, and that's how we sort of operate our business and demonstrate our value to our customers.
So at the end of the day, what I care about, right, is my ROI. What's my return on investment? Yeah. What have I spent in this particular campaign, and what are the quantifiable results? So you're providing a dashboard, a one-stop shop kind of place where I can look and see different campaigns, what's clicking, what's not, what's working, what's not, because something I also learned, it's not just getting in front of that audience, it's getting in front of that audience at the right time with the right message.
Yeah, it's stimulating action, right? Did we get customer A to move down the sales pipeline to Z, right?
Yep.
And how did that journey happen? And so we can go back to our customers and say, well, prior to our relationship, we didn't have all of these elements deployed, but now we do, and here's the value that goes along with it. That was a game changer.
I bet it was.
The moment we could take away the ambiguity of our value was tremendous.
So, you're continuing to innovate. There was something you touched on offline before we started that registered something for me, and I'll share why. So I'm working with some business partners now in the new world, right?
Yeah.
Cost containment, right? For businesses, it's all about now keeping the lights on, right? Keeping things moving forward, still delivering absolute excellence in whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. But cost containment has now come to the forefront for all of us. Unfortunately, when, and I hear this over and over and over, and this is not pointing fingers, this is understanding that the modern era has never faced something like this. So the leaders in the community, our elected officials, and everyone in between is doing the best they can to navigate these waters also, sure. Right? But until you've walked a day in my shoes or your shoes, you'll never understand my challenges. So we wanted to put together a deck, a foundation, and then there's a lot of technology behind what we're trying to do that focused on cost containment. So now you have a new site that you're working on, savelocalnyc.com.
Yeah, so this was a complete collaboration between my brother Brian and I, and you know, when we look back on other, we'll call it tragic times, and specifically in New York, and you know, how did we reboot, right? You got to look back at those experiences, you know, and use them to say, okay, what worked, and how can we help our customers get past the moment? How can we also future ourselves at the same time? And a great credit to the Valpak Corporation, my banks, and you know, just on collaboration of the Save Local NYC project. And Save Local NYC is about $1 million of media money, right? And there is no commitments. There's no, right? If you're a local business owner in our territory between Staten Island and Brooklyn, and you need to, you know, whatever it is you need, we have a 30-minute consultation, which is completely free, and then you fill out a 30-second form. We will then put together a media budget and apply money. There's no future commitment. There's no financial commitment. The money is there to be spent and to be used by local businesses.
Wow.
And the idea is to give back, right? So being of service, whether it was Sandy or you know, on the back of 9/11, I look back, and we always provided something of service to our business community, and that will hopefully help the local community now and in the future.
I applaud you for this in a time when I can tell you it's desperately needed. So for folks to investigate this, they go to savelocalnyc.com.
Yep.
And Sean and his team and his preferred lenders have made available $1 million for small businesses that are struggling as they try and reemerge from the pandemic here. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I applaud you for it. We need more of this now, right? So it's tough. It's always tough to go into the budget and to allocate any type of significant resources outside of the immediate demands of the business. They never stop, right? That's a big misconception people think as you kind of grow the company, as things get bigger, the bills get bigger too, the responsibilities get bigger, the codependencies get bigger. You have more people who are feeding their families and their loved ones that become dependent on you, and it becomes very difficult. So when times are good, you know, it's a lot easier to write that check and to do what you should be doing in the community. But when times are tough, we've done, I'm very proud to say, our share of this, and we'll continue to do it. When times are tough, that's when you really measure a company, right, is when things are hard. So I really applaud you for that, because we're in need now. It's a very difficult time out there. There's a lot of uncertainty. We're finding that there's been a cumulative toll that is almost like unspoken. We're always talking about what's happening in the moment, but what we found is since March, there's been this progressive building up of frustration, of anxiety, of fear, and it's starting to manifest in everything. You're starting to see it everywhere. People's nerves are frayed. Again, people are afraid. These businesses, in many cases, people have worked their whole lives to build, and it's very uncertain times. So thank you for that.
Yeah, so it's not exclusive to our existing or former customers. It's open to anybody or any business. You know, I will say that for local business or to the local business community, it's time to now innovate. I know the word of the moment is pivot, and maybe that'll be here for a while. But I think what you're going to see here, James, is businesses shaping their economics quite differently.
Yep.
As this starts to go away, as this thing becomes part of the past, we're going to see more people become entrepreneurs. They're not, there was once this vulnerability about jumping off and I've got this job security and now they've had 6-7 months of thinking, I would have, could have, should have jumped off and maybe taken that chance, and that's going to happen.
That's a really great observation.
Yeah.
The pattern was broken, and now you'll see this entrepreneurial spirit where people had, because that's a tough choice. Very difficult to kind of cut the umbilical cord and get out of that comfort zone.
Yeah. I also think that the intrapreneurial, right, it's a word that not a lot of people are familiar with, but most people in the business community are, is that idea of how can an employee make equivalent income to an employer, right? Without all of the associated, office expenses and utilities and so on and so forth. How do I become an intrapreneur? And that's going to be very pronounced. I think that people want to work from anywhere at this point in time, and entrepreneurship allows you to do that. There's been a lot of, there's been some good moments. There's been great moments here in terms of spending time with family.
Silver linings.
And absolutely silver linings, There's things that I will absolutely not go back to doing
Agreed.
again. And you have to be grateful for that. You do.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. So, believe it or not, we're already running up against an hour, but I did want to double back really quick.
Sure.
Morris Smith.
Yeah. Morris Smith is in the Saturday Night Live, Saturday Night Fever clip there. Morris Smith is family friend, my sister's best friend, who unfortunately died in 9/11. She was the only female police officer to die in 9/11. And I'm going to go out here on a limb, James, and maybe this is something that we do together here. It's I want to create a movement that 9/11 becomes a day of recognition, right? It becomes a day we as a city or we as a country, we take that day to remember our people and what happened on that day, and shall we never forget.
It's kind of remarkable, and it's tough to not get choked up that it's been as long as it's been.
20 years next year.
And we all have our personal experiences, and we'll definitely connect on that.
74th Street is now Morris Smith Way.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Look, Sean, thank you for everything you're doing in the community. Thank you for everything you've done for us
for the opportunity,
in our business. It's always great to see you. We should get together more often. I do want to connect with you on some of these other initiatives offline. Everybody out there, thank you again for the support. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the criticism. Keep it all coming. We're having a good time with this, and we'll catch you on the next one, everyone. Stay safe.